Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Horry County, South Carolina, November 23, 2023. Sean and Monica Williams are a married couple originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. 2 years ago, Sean and Monica Williams bought a new home in Horry County, South Carolina, which is where Myrtle Beach is located. As law-abiding citizens and military veterans, they are pillars of their community. Unfortunately, under white supremacy, there's all kinds of vermin allowed to grow next to the pillars. The Williams have been subjected to an ongoing problem by two of their neighbors who were basically the evil counterparts of Mr. and Mrs. Williams. If the Williams are hard-working, conscientious people, their problem neighbors are lazy, inbred, hateful losers. Their neighbors have been racially harassing them, and this campaign of intimidation and threatening gestures hit an all-time high over Thanksgiving weekend. That was when the Williams saw that their neighbors had put up a cross and then set fire to it. This no more than 8 feet from the Williams property. The names of these racist neighbors are Warden Butler and Alexis Hartnett. These two inbred degenerates look like they just stepped out of a remake of Deliverance. The Williams couple called the police after this cross-burning incident, and the cops' own body camera video showed Hartnett repeatedly using racial slurs toward the victim's family, and Hartnett also continued using racial slurs even after officers told her to go back inside her home. And this Alexis Hartnett character also referenced killing a black woman in the past while she was using her racial slurs. That's important because people think that these Karens are harmless or otherwise merely obnoxious, but they're not. They are the white female point men for these white supremacist attacks. Hartnett was talking about killing a black woman in the past and throwing racial slurs and threats. That's not some victimless crime. This is something that your feminist pals don't talk about. They simply act as if white women are not beneficiaries of white supremacy. You have white female commentators, politicians, and social activists who talk about white women as if they are a downtrodden minority. Meanwhile, totally ignoring that they are 50% of the perpetrators and beneficiaries of white supremacy. Though not to be outdone, this Butler person posted the Williams location on Facebook and posted a picture of their mailbox which had their address on it. He also posted that he was, quote, summoning the devil's army, and I don't care if they and I both go down in the same boat. He also said on Facebook that I'm about to make them pay, which was added to his original post that said they come on holidays to start a fight with me. The post referenced the victims visiting because it was a second home for them. Now that last part that this Butler person wrote is actually pretty important, because if this was the black couple's second home, well, that means they've got multiple properties. Does anyone think that these two reprobates even own the single wide that they're living in? This was the main reason for the white marauding gangs who carried out numerous acts of ethnic cleansing when they destroyed black townships in the early 20th century. When these white supremacists see black people who are prospering, or worse, doing better than they are, they go full Neanderthal. That's what set these cretins off. Black people who worked for what they have, and they saw that their white privilege simply couldn't match it. White privilege is a social contract between white society and its economic and political leadership. And the contract is that there will be a glass floor to prevent those classified as white from ever falling to the bottom. But that glass floor also acts as a glass ceiling to ensure black people never rise above white society, not as individuals and certainly not as a group. This rigged, artificial manufactured racial hierarchy is what comprises the tangible benefits given to those classified as white. But when black people excel regardless of the restrictions, and when genetic immunity from law and white privilege simply aren't enough to keep the white supremacists ahead of us, they resort to violence. And because these racist police and prosecutors are of the same perverted mentality, they're all working together, they help to make sure that these race attacks go unpunished. Now, even after the police showed up and verified this crime and talked to the perpetrators, they still took a week before they decided to actually arrest these two domestic terrorists. And then they were released the very next day, and they're not supposed to be back in court until March 6th. That's 2 months from now. Notice how the gears of justice always grind to a halt, depending on the color of the person who's been charged. And speaking of charges, they were both charged with second-degree harassment. Hartnett also faces charges of third-degree assault and battery. Notice all that? All this second-degree and third-degree stuff. So the fix is in, and the racist rubes are doing what they do, treating felonies as misdemeanors. Not terrorism, not a terroristic threat, or even a hate crime. South Carolina has no state hate crime laws. We can thank the Republican-controlled legislature for that, but considering that Nikki Haley was governor of the state, I'm sure she was as upset as anyone that her GOP colleagues kept blocking the legislation, right? And you won't be surprised to learn that this isn't these inbred morons' first run-ins with the law. Butler has had at least 5 arrests for assault and disorderly conduct. So this career criminal is being allowed to remain on the loose because of genetic immunity from law and because he's doing the white supremacist bidding. These 2 reprobates are part of the irregular forces of white supremacy, the race soldiers who don't wear uniforms, but who carry out the race attacks that the police think are a little bit too risky for them to be doing, like, say, cross burnings. Keep in mind, the Williams are both veterans, and that being the case, they have the training and the knowledge to make sure that these 2 race terrorists' career of threatening black people doesn't go any further. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power tools, because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. Right about now, I'm sure you're wondering, where's Jim Crow Joe's Department of Injustice at? Has Merrick Garland awoken from his coma and started doing his job? Of course not. The FBI is saying that they are investigating, but that was last month when they said it. And here we are a month later and nothing's come of it. I guess that's their answer. This racist incident happened in November. It's January now. So what are the feds waiting for? They're waiting for this to all fade from the headlines because they never intended to do anything to begin with. Black people are only 13% of the population, but we are over 50% of hate crimes victims in this country. And while it only took a couple of acts of violence against Asian Americans to get a federal law specifically for them passed, the black community is the majority of hate crimes victims, and you can't even get the congressional black talkers to say a word about it. Speaking of which, South Carolina is where this happened. That's Jim Clyburn's state. So where is America's favorite sharecropper while all this is going on? Keep in mind that just last week, Clyburn was literally sitting right beside Biden in South Carolina. That was when Biden came for his little PR stunt at Mother Emanuel Church. And Clyburn was sitting there just yucking it up with Biden as if he didn't have a care in the world, as if he didn't know or care that there were cross burnings going on in his state. So he's sitting right there next to Biden only a few weeks after this incident, and did you hear Clyburn say a word about it? Biden was mouthing some empty platitudes about white supremacy, but he stood in a black church in South Carolina and didn't even acknowledge that this incident had happened. The authorities have made it clear they're not going to prosecute these race terrorists. As black people, we have to be proactive about our own self-defense, and we must also stick up for or encourage those who defend themselves from anti-black violence. Between Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, we have to understand we are up against an organized offense. So we need an organized defense. Protecting and promoting anti-black violence is a bipartisan issue. Both political parties are on board with this. Republicans perpetrate the violence, and Democrats say they're not going to do anything about it. The problem isn't that they can't change things, it's that they are determined to make sure nothing changes. So it's up to us to make sure it changes. An anti-black racist is a racial terrorist, regardless of if they carry a badge or just carry some racial grudge. Anti-black violence is a group sport, but so is black self-defense. Because in every instance where you've had black people who pulled up on the racists at their own homes, the racists were the ones who fled. Their own white supremacist pals didn't dare show up to even say a word on their behalf. But regardless, black people have a right and a duty to protect ourselves. The victims of this incident said that they were concerned that these 2 psychopathic racists would escalate their attacks as they've threatened to do. Well, that being the case, then, you can't depend on the cops to protect you. The police are in league with these racists. For all we know, the police are the ones who put them up to it. They're certainly protecting them. So we have to be serious about protecting ourselves and one another. The enemy is pulling these stunts to test how serious we are about our safety and security. Are we taking care of ourselves, or sitting back and waiting to see if the same racist cops who don't do anything about these guys are one day going to wake up and actually do their jobs? 2020 taught a lesson. When the people make it clear they will stop racist violence themselves, the prosecutors suddenly discovered that they could bring charges because they saw that there would be consequences if they didn't. The people as a group made it clear they were no longer going to be playing along with the lie that these prosecutors just couldn't do anything. The people made it clear they had had enough and that they were going to fix the problem themselves. And the people also made it clear they considered these prosecutors to be part of the problem. That was when you had these DAs suddenly discover, oh my God, we can bring charges. Yeah, they figured it out real quick, didn't they? The next logical step for this evolution is to support black self-defense from these racists. If they threaten us, stop the threat. They try to escalate things, then we bring it down. These creeps pulled this stunt on Thanksgiving weekend. If we get serious about self-defense, the only thing these racists will have to be thankful for is not ending up like the turkey. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: D. Tubman, Andrew Lewis, Quincy X, Iris Johnson, and Shannon Moore. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message.